Anyhow, Zahroof Mohamed, 1982 batch. And what I'm going to do right now is, it was kind of difficult for me to create a presentation for this because I didn't want to talk about my company because that would be kind of boring. It's very technical. So I thought I would talk more about my journey pretty much and leave things open for conversation, like questions afterwards, right? So can we go to the next slide? So where am I? So basically, I'm a Trivandrum guy. Born in Trivandrum and studied in England, came back and joined Lyra School in 1977 and graduated from Lyra School in 1982. Went to Government Arts College. But the thing was, I was always interested in mechanical engineering. So that was prime focus for me. And I think one of the important things is that I went to the US to pursue higher education. And so after my engineering college of Engineering Trivandrum, mechanical engineering, I went to Texas A&M in Houston, in College Station. And I did 2 masters, one in road dynamics and the other one in turbo machinery. And basically the thing is, I was interested in cars, right? Designing cars. But then I realized when I went to the US that nobody designs cars as such. You'll probably be designing a doorknob or something of the sort, right? So what was really exciting was turbo machinery because I suddenly realized that these things run really fast. I'm like 100,000 RPM and things like that is kind of common. So that was what I really got into, and I decided to follow that subject, right? So my first patent, I obtained my first patent while I was doing research in college at Texas A&M University. So basically at that particular time, there were lots of research, funding opportunities in computer science and things like that, in coding. And I was very particular that I did not want to jump into coding and things like that. So I stuck with this professor who was doing some work, and I did some work for him. And so I got my patent in summer before I actually joined any kind of research and development. The reason I'm saying that, I was thinking that there were going to be some younger guys over here, but it's possible, right? With the education that you get in College of Engineering Trivandrum, you can actually, you just need to switch and understand and have confidence, and you can, think of different things and get something out of it, right? So after my master's in Texas A&M, I joined Atlas Copco in New York, and I was designing all these kind of things over there, those pictures, right? Road dynamics and turbo machinery, aerodynamics kind of thing. And I worked in New York till 2000, and then I went to Belgium, where I joined Atlas Copco's Air Tech division. I was actually the first non-European, actually non-Belgian and non-Swedish guy to join that particular division of Atlas Copco. And that was the core technology thing, right? So again, helped me learn a lot and become state of the art in compression technology. So before I was doing centrifugal compressors, over here I started doing screw compressors and other things. Again, very technical. I've always been technical. I've actually resisted getting into management because many of the companies, what they do is like you get up to a particular point in technical thing and then they say, hey, become a manager, right? And I've always said no. I want to do the work in CFD and FA and things like that. And so they usually had to make new positions for me wherever I joined. So, which helped me finally. So I was in Belgium till 2003, came back to US, joined York International. York International is very famous air conditioning. They actually did the air conditioning of the channel, under the thing and the Mecca and things like that. So very big air conditioning kind of projects. So again, was centrifugal compressor kind of stuff. That's where I actually invented a new kind of refrigeration cycle. That was another thing. And after York International, I had to wait for a couple of years because of non-compete, and then I joined Cooper Compression or Cameron Compression, and I was in charge of all new centrifugal compressors, which was coming out of Buffalo. I was in charge of the turbocharger designers, which was coming out of Salina. And since I was in Houston, I was put into reciprocating compressors. Okay, and I was in charge of the biggest project in the company, and which was the valves. So I'm just giving you that. It's kind of a precursor to something that's happening later. But that's where I got introduced to valves and reciprocating compressor for the first time. And after Cooper compression, so these are some of the products. These are the products that I actually was making, right? I'm like, these are full compressors. So on the top, you can see centrifugal compressors, different types of centrifugal compressors, packages and things like that. And on the bottom, you can see reciprocating compressors, full packages. I mean, I was designing the core. Yeah. And I was also into integrated high-speed electrical permanent magnet motors. So in 1994, we were making a motor, permanent magnet motor for Atlas Copco, which was about 500 horsepower and 50,000 RPM, which is pretty good, even considering today's standards, right? And these are screw compressors. I was put in charge of creating the next generation of oil-free screw compressors for Atlas Copco. So that's shown there too. Okay, so in 2007, there was a kind of restructuring in Cameron, and I wasn't really happy with the way it was going. And so I actually joined Samsung Techwin. So Samsung Techwin, not many people know that Samsung is actually the largest manufacturer of LNG carriers in the world, right? And so they have also got a compressor and turbocharger turbine group, power systems group. So they wanted me to come in and, they had air compressors, but they didn't have anything for gas. So they wanted me to start up their entire range of gas compressors. And so I started a Turbo Machinery Center of Excellence for them in Houston. They asked me, and then I was also in charge of all the products which was coming out of Changwon in South Korea. And long story short, since I was working for US companies, I really did not like working for a Korean company. The culture is very different, and the expectations are kind of different. So I wanted to get out. So after 2 years, my sons were, doing some, they didn't need my full-time, I'm like partial or whatever I was contributing. So I thought this was probably the time for me to try something on my own. I was already doing a lot of new products for other companies. And so I decided, okay, I'll do something myself. And then the business decision at that particular point in time was, I loved making full compressors, but I could not afford to do that as a small company, as a new company. So what I did was, the project that I did at Cameron, I talked about reciprocating compressors, right? So that product, since I was in charge of the product, I knew all the market requirements, which engineers typically don't have. So I had, presented to the president of the company and all kinds of stuff. So I knew all the marketing requirements, all the business requirements, voice of the customers, and all those kind of things. And so I decided to focus on that, on valves for reciprocating compressors. It's a very niche product, but it's a huge opportunity. I knew the market opportunity worldwide, right? And so what I did was I started a company, Zahroof Corp, which I still have. And that company I started formed as a Texas corporation. And it is formed to create technology and to hold IP of technology, right? So in that company, I developed the first valve, the modular reed valve, and actually it took me half an hour to actually come up with the design. And it took me about several months to actually get it into a prototype format. And there's another big story. I actually did everything in my house, in the garage. It's a typical US kind of, US is a big thing, where you do it in your own garage. I had my kids manufacturing things for me at one point. And so it was tested, and it worked really well. I sent, reports of its performance to 2 companies. And fortunately, unfortunately, both companies wanted to test them, right? And suddenly I had to make a whole bunch of valves. And suddenly I needed a lot of money, capital, in order to make these valves for these requirements, because both of them chose really large compressors which required a lot of valves. So at that particular point, I decided, okay, I'll get some angel investors, because some of my friends, I was going out to look for capital, and they heard about it and they said, why don't you come to us, and we'll provide you with cash for this because we think it's a great idea. And so I got angel investors to come in, and I started Zahroof Valves Inc. in 2010, and that kind of started. So basically from Zahroof Corp, I licensed the technology to Zahroof Valves, and then started this company to commercialize this particular product. And Zahroof Valves, that's how Zahroof Valves Inc. was formed. It was a completely disruptive technology. It didn't look like anything which was out there. So big problem was that it wasn't accepted. I'm like, this is the most critical equipment in any company, your compressor, right? Refineries and all kinds of stuff. If your compressor is out, you're losing millions of dollars per day. And so the big thing was, convincing people to put them in the compressor. All of them was based on my relationship with them knowing me as an engineer and working for Atlas Copco and all that stuff. I got those things in. In about 2 years or 3 years after that, I had references, and then it took off. The company really took off well, and then we were selling first in the US, and then organically. I wasn't interested in going out, but Australia, suddenly somebody showed up from Australia, and they won't represent us, and we put all the shell compressors in Australia was converted to our valves, and then we got into different verticals. There's lots of different verticals inside this industry also. So we started replacing valves, and the biggest refinery in North America has got our valves, all of them. And slowly we got into Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and India. We finally made a breakthrough in India in 2019. So Oil India and BPCL and DCM, ONGC, we got some valves in. So it's starting to pick up. So anyhow, 2022. So I went through 2 rounds of more capital, basically. One was a private equity company called NGP ETP, and the other one was Saudi Aramco, right? So they invested money in the company, and what happened is in 2022, NGP ETP ran out of, their fund ended, so they needed to get the money back in order to give it to their the investors. And so they wanted to, the way to get their money is to sell the company. So they somehow managed to convince Saudi Aramco, and so together they decided that they wanted to sell the company, and that's how I had to sell the company, because I wasn't really interested in selling it, because I had just gone through the hassles of getting the valves introduced, and I was waiting for the pickup, right? So I had to sell it. So 2023, I actually left. I was chairman of the board, and I kind of left in 2023 December. And the deal takes about 1 year, to get the deal. So Atlas Copco finally acquired the company in 2024 March, right? So as soon as 2024 March, and I was very particular that I was not going to sign any non-compete, any new agreements, because I knew I was going to come back into the industry, right? So 2024, I started developing a new technology, because I looked at, I had about 13 years of experience putting these valves out in the market, and I knew the weaknesses of it. And so I could focus. The problem with engineering and getting into a business is when you're running a business, you don't have much time to do engineering work. So you're focusing on running the company and doing whatever it takes to get it going, right? So now I could sit back and just focus on, hey, what were the issues? And I came up with a new design. And so I'm presenting it as the next generation of the invention that I'd made before. But this time, what I'm doing right now is I decided my whole company, all the manufacturing, everything happened in the US. And this time I'm doing it in India. So I started a company in Texas called Zahroof Global Inc., which is going to be responsible for the sale of this product worldwide. And a company in India, Zahroof Global Private Limited. And I have got operations in Coimbatore right now. Most likely the sales will be in Pune or someplace. But all the engineering, development, and those kind of things I want to bring into India. And that's why I'm here. So the first time in my life, I've been away from my house for more than 3 weeks. I've been here for more than a year. First time in my life, okay? And not only that, I've never worked in India before. So this is a huge change, huge experience trying to get a GST. I don't even know what a GST is, right? So anyway, getting all this paperwork and entire thing established, but we've got a operations going on. In fact, we got sales also. I'm actually also talking to Petronas in Malaysia, so we're going to have a collaboration with another company, which is have to do some localization. So doing a JV in Malaysia most likely. But US is, I've got a couple of distributors in US who are going to be working for this particular thing. And so we're at this particular point where I'm probably going to launch the product in a couple of weeks and ship the first set of products. We're just doing the prototyping and all kinds of stuff. So coming here was difficult because we were just testing some valves, you know, and I'd say, oh, I'm going for 4 days. So anyway, when I go back, I'll have to see how they're doing. So hired 4 guys, and this was difficult, okay? I'm like, by the way, my first employee is a CET guy, College of Engineering from Trivandrum, from Kashmir actually. And I hired 5 guys before I went last year when I was in India, and ended up firing 4 of them because I found that there's a big difference in culture and how people, you know, get into these companies, and you know, because they're not given freedom to think by themselves. That's what so they are told something by the boss and they say, yeah, okay, sir, and they don't have the courage, confidence to go up and give new ideas. So a lot of them I found was good at software. They knew how to run the software, but they didn't know the engineering part of it. So they were not engineers, they were software guys, you know. So that was a big problem for me because that wouldn't work for me, right? So those kind of you know, learning experiences. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get, you know, the smart guys who just graduated from college. I can train them, you know, and then get them into it, and then spend more time looking for the guys who have actually done some work, engineering kind of work, more hands-on. And I find those are actually diploma guys rather than, you know, engineering guys who've got actually hands-on kind of experience, who can do something, but they don't have the analytical background to do the actual development work. So those things are running around my mind, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'll be doing with India versus US. I might bring the R&D back to the US, that's, you know, and then have the production and engineering over here. So still lots of things, a lot of learning experiences going on, right? So that's where I am right now. So lots of things. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.